Hello, YouTube. Ancient labyrinths are laid out of stones and are scattered in large numbers along the coast of the White Sea. These mysterious megalithic shapes or figures seem to be part of some plan that we modern people do not understand, do not know about. The so-called Solovetsky labyrinths are especially famous among fans of mysticism and historical enigmas. These are more than 30 very similar shapes of different sizes. Where did these mysterious signs come from in the north, and to whom were they addressed? Hypotheses are put forward, and they're very different, but the essence is the same. Each such maze or labyrinth has a main spiral, which then expands and then narrows. The ends of the spiral are thicker due to large boulders. In the center, there was usually a mountain of stones, two spirals inscribed one into the other and resembling snakes. Together, they look like a ball of thread, similar to a horseshoe or the kalach, traditional East Slavic bread, shaped like a padlock or various kinds of wheels. Interestingly, similar labyrinths can be found not only in Russia, but also in the countries of Scandinavia, as well as other parts of Europe, and I'll mention one specifically, but later. Since all these megalithic structures are made in the same style, it can be seen with the naked eye that they are clearly of not natural origin. It can be assumed that the entire territory of Europe was once a single civilization, but again, this is only a hypothesis so far. If we talk about the Russian northern labyrinths on the Solovki Islands or Solovetsky Islands, the most of these megaliths are found on the Bolshoi Zayetsky Island, located in the southwestern part of this archipelago. This is not only 13 shapes of their stones, but also 850 mounds. According to one hypothesis, such labyrinths in the Russian north, they're called Babylons, were part of a cult. Northern pagans, for example, could perform ritual dances around spiral shapes. Perhaps it was some kind of funeral rite, and in this case, we can say that the remains of shamans or important people were buried under the stones. Well, during the excavations carried out in the area of several such Babylons, archaeologists really found traces of ritual bonfires. The second hypothesis is that the stone shapes or diagrams were created by the Aborigines to confuse evil spirits in which the ancestors of modern Northerners believed. They say that if the spirits come out of the underworld, or the so-called lower world, in which all the dead go to, then according to the pagans, they will go through these labyrinths and get lost. This hypothesis about the purpose of the labyrinths was held, for example, by the famous scientist and Eastern Christian Orthodox priest Pavel Florensky, who suffered from the Soviet socialist persecutions of the believers after the Bolshevik takeover of the former empire. Florensky was a Russian Orthodox theologian, priest, philosopher, mathematician, physicist, electrical engineer, inventor, polymath, and neo-martyr. Some of his ancestors were Armenians from the Karabakh area. He mentioned the local Babylonian labyrinths in his notes in 1935. In 1937, the communist regime killed him, and Florensky was buried in a secret grave in Korangagaskas near Toksovo. That's about 20 kilometers northeast of St. Petersburg. He was buried together with 30,000 others who were executed by the NKVD, as the KGB was called then, at the same time. These symbolic, ornate corridors are really not as simple as it seems. If you enter them, you will not get out soon. In the largest mazes, you will have to walk the whole way for 20 minutes. The main thing is to follow strictly along the corridor without jumping over stone lines. In this case, you will certainly exit, and in the same way as you entered, because the corridor has only one entrance-exit. According to the third ritual hypothesis, the labyrinths served as platforms for sacrifices. Not only the remains of human bones, but also animals, birds, and fish were found on the site of some megalithic shapes. The local aborigines apparently tried to appease the deities they believed in. Another hypothesis is related to fishing, the main occupation of the Proto-Saami tribes who lived in that area. Perhaps the ancient fishermen lured with the help of certain rituals and also held on these stones, or somehow made traps using the stone spirals. Historians' hypotheses differ in details, but the meaning is the same. The construction of Babylons was a kind of ancient cult and similar for many neighboring peoples scattered throughout Europe. At the beginning of the last century, the outstanding researcher Nikolai Vinogradov drew attention to the fact that both Lapps, Samoyeds, and other northern aboriginal peoples consider the shapes created by their ancestors as religious structures. He also drew attention to the fact that it was no coincidence that the northerners called these coils of stones Babylons. To him, there is a clear reference to the Bible here, which also speaks of their important religious significance, information about which has been passed down in these parts from generation to generation. It is likely that the ancient peoples in this part of the planet regularly contacted each other since several millennia ago the climate in northern Europe was warmer and it was easier to get to the Solovetsky archipelago by sea, while people who believe in extraterrestrial civilizations and aliens also believe that the Babylons were a kind of reference point for aliens who visited our planet. Well, there are ancient stone monuments in the Russian north that had been built at the same time as Stonehenge in England and the Egyptian pyramids. If we have that time correct, because I'm not sure if we know when the pyramids were built exactly. Smaller in size, the spiral labyrinths of the White Sea are no less enigmatic. I also want to mention something to you. In my research of underwater humanoids, a few years ago, I found very interesting information about encounters in 1932 on the shores of the White Sea, and you should look at my videos about the strange underwater humanoids of Eurasia. I'm sure you will find it interesting. Anyway, the labyrinths can be found on the Solovetsky Islands and throughout the area known as the Tersk Shores, southern portion of the Kola Peninsula. And I will also ask you to look at my other videos about the Kola Peninsula. It's a very mysterious place in itself. Look, as I have shown you in my other videos about the Kola Peninsula, this was also a destination point for the early expedition of Barchenko, a protege of the Soviet secret police in the 1920s and an arduous researcher of the paranormal world. One of the labyrinths lies near the ancient Umba, near the Lesnoy settlement. The locals have called it Babylon for many centuries. While nobody knows today how this name came about. Perhaps there is a connection to the ancient Sumerian civilization. No one really knows the reason, just as they are not certain about the cause for numerous USO unidentified submersible objects sightings in this area. Saami hunters, descendants of ancient nomadic tribes, reindeer breeders, cited UFOs over the area on numerous occasions. A number of Russian archaeologists who have studied the local legends consider the labyrinths to be gateways to an underground kingdom. Similar double spiral labyrinths have been found throughout the ancient world, in Egypt, China, and Scandinavia too. They symbolize the sun in the ancient cultures. What is more amazing, the same double spiral labyrinths were depicted on ancient Minoan coins minted on the island of Crete, one of the most mysterious civilizations of the Neolithic age. Ivan Yefremov, that enigmatic Russian scientist whom the KGB believed to be an extraterrestrial operating on Earth, he drew attention consistently to the mysteries of ancient Crete. And you should see some of the objects that are located in the museums of Crete and are not open to be photographed. Very interesting place. Now, I only found one such image of Minoan coins, but there was someone whom I greatly admired who had seen the coins and who he was the one to draw the parallels to ancient Crete. Andrei Leonidovich Nikitin passed away in 2005 in Moscow, Russia. He was a Russian historian, archaeologist, novelist, literary critic, and publicist. He was a full member of the Geographical Society of the USSR, when it existed, the USSR, and member of the Union of Writers of the USSR. Nikitin conducted archaeological research in the Volga-Oka interfluvi on the shores of the White Sea, participated in the excavations of Novgorod, Pskov in the Crimea, in the south of Ukraine, in Moldova, in Transcaucasia. Author of works on archaeology, history, paleogeography, historical ecology of Eastern Europe. In 1986, I was able to get his book in English. The title is Bonfires on the Shores, in Russian, Kostry na берегах. Just in time before I left to Africa to do my research of paleocontact or ancient aliens hypothesis, among other things, and more. The book also gave me a few ideas. This book is about archaeologists, about their research and discoveries, about penetrating into the secrets of the distant past, which helps to realize the present and, as it were, opens the door to the future. The romance of long-distance expeditions, a sharp detective story of scientific research, fantastic discoveries in their surprise. All this makes up the content of the stories included in the book. And these are stories that it's not fictional, it's non-fictional, it's his research, field research. In the White Sea Labyrinth narrative, Nikitin focuses on only one topic. The fate of an archaeologist and a journalist throws him several times, so to say, on the Tersk shore of the White Sea, in a land almost unknown to most of us. Thanks to the author, readers have the opportunity to visit this region with its unique landscapes, amazing history, and difficult and contradictory Soviet presence of the early 1980s. And then the main theme of the next white spot area arises: the stone labyrinths of the White Sea, amazing structures, the purpose of which has not yet been solved by science. Nikitin undertakes to solve the riddle in his own way, and what is characteristic of him, tries to solve it in the interconnection of the entire human history of those places for almost a dozen millennia, and even against the background of the dynamic development of the nature of the Kola Peninsula. Well, Andrei Nikitin Russian archaeologist, researcher, and writer mentioned a very curious incident in that book. As a field archaeologist, he had studied the labyrinths of various sizes throughout the Russian north. On one occasion, Nikitin showed his drawings of those mazes, or labyrinths, to a friend, a physicist. The scientist friend asked him in amazement, why would an archaeologist draw direct transmission aerial antenna of broad frequency range? The physicist could not believe that he was looking at an ancient stone structure built on the shores of northern seas thousands of years ago. There you have it. When it comes to such ancient history, we ourselves are in a maze. But I am certain there are those in this world who know much more and maybe continue to use incredible technologies of the lost civilizations. I believe we see their presence in our oceans, in our skies, and in the tunnels that encircle the planet, but we cannot access their realms as yet. So, this is what I wanted to let you know today. Please support my research. You will see the links in the description to this video on how to do so. Please subscribe to my channel. Please tell others. Please like my videos. Thank you.